hello. And in the week where Leicester get a bye into the semis, Semi's the best player in the world. Is Sexton overrated? Good for the Lions. Brumbies are back on top. Bowden beats Richie, and our beloved Bordeaux go marching on. This plus much more on this episode of the Ruck and Wall podcast. Lads, how you getting on? Johnny's back. No Harry this week.
No Harry. Yeah, not too bad. Managed to see a few games. It was good.
Yeah.
It made a nice change, seeing those big top 14 teams in action, and the Celtic League teams being terrible on the whole.
Yeah, that was yeah, not the best week for the Pro 14 advertisement. Pretty good for the Premiership and pretty good for the top 14, really. Joe, how are you getting on?
Yeah, not too bad. Still struggling to watch the matches. Just back in school time now and coaching rugby on Saturday. So I'm actually watching some of the highlights on another tab at the minute. Just watched Bordeaux Begler beat Edinburgh, which is lovely. But yeah, some really good stuff up there. The highlight reels certainly are pretty damn good. There's some really good tries scored this weekend. So yeah, it's great. And it looks like there's some fans back in France, which is really cool.
Yeah, they had there was about 9,000 in Clermont, I think.
Yeah,
which
it's. I know they've got a big old stadium. I don't know. It must be 25, 30,000 seater stadium, I'm guessing. Didn't seem to be much social distancing going on in parts, but it's a very French way of watching it, I suppose, in this current climate. Kind of, we'll have a few big crowds.
Did you watch that game, Johnny?
I saw parts of it. Tranduc, at the ripe old age of I don't know, he must be his early to mid 30s. Looks solid.
He scored try of the weekend. That lovely little kick over the top, and poor old it went through Matsushima and Damien Penaud, who didn't have a clue what happened, and Tranduc just walked over. That was probably try of the weekend for me.
When I saw that, I saw it before I've seen any of the rest of the rugby. I saw it on, I think it was on Instagram. Somebody had put it on, saying, watch this amazing try. And he kicks it. And I watched the two players coming across and where it's going to bounce. I'm like, surely not. And it rips back. Like, obviously, US Open's on at the minute. It's as if Tiger Woods has put a wedge into the green. It's back spun all the way back into the hole. Just got, yeah, that's just lucky. I think you can't call it anything else but luck. But good to see him still playing. I had no idea he was still around.
Yeah, he's 33.
33.
So yeah, he's still kicking around. He's the backup to
Finn Russell.
Ben Volavola moved on. I can't remember where Ben Volavola's gone now, but he's gone somewhere. But yeah, just quickly on that game while we're on it. Racing looked good in parts. It wasn't a very fluid game though. I think something that we've not really seen a lot of. It's just, and again, we did say at the start of this podcast we weren't going to do too much referee bashing, but in some cases you kind of have to appeal to it and make the point that Romain Poit definitely over-refereed this game. There was times where the commentators were like, I think that's a bit of a harsh penalty and a harsh yellow card. Like, he sent off, I've never seen so many people go off in the front row since the restart. But it was like two scrum penalties, and I think the loose head for Clermont went off, and then Slimani got yellow carded towards the end, and that sort of killed the flow of the game. Because go on.
And when he gave that yellow card to Clermont, it was kind of, I don't know, on the 10-metre line from the halfway. And it's not like it was in a red zone area. And it was relatively early on in the match. So kind of, I don't know, you don't often see that many yellow cards outside of the red zone unless it's really repeat offence, which it didn't seem to be. I don't know, it was a bit of an odd one.
Yeah, as the game as a whole, it was fine. There was definitely better games the weekend, and as I say, Racing taking it 36-27. Clermont don't look as good as they are. I think Toyova, who's gone to Toulon, the inside centre, the New Zealand lad who's been there for ages. They really missed him in the centre. They missed a really big ball carrying. What I would say is Matsushima scored a nice try. Lovely bit of footwork. I kind of looked at him at the start and was like, they bought him as got him in as like how hopefully to see how if they can replicate what Cheslin Kolbe does for Toulouse. But I was kind of like, is he going to really stand out? And actually, to be fair to him, he proved me wrong. Actually, he had he had a slow start and he probably made a mistake with the Trandut kick, but that little bit of step and go when you've got really, because in the French league you've got those big boys, especially in the forwards. They are, though they're big, they're not the mobilest guys. So if you get them on the back foot, they can be beaten quite easily. But yeah, Racing look good. They're going to play Saracens next week, who really surprised. Beaten the Leinster's trebles over 25-17. The Alex Good show.
Yeah,
you saw you watched that. I've only seen the highlights of that, so you probably know a bit more about that than I do, Johnny. But yeah,
I mean Leinster. I even think this score flattered Leinster. They weren't there in the first 40. They just weren't there. They were getting boshed about, penalties everywhere, and they just couldn't cope. It just couldn't cope with the kind of Saracens kicking game. To be fair, it was pinpoint, and Wigglesworth with his box kicks. He was doing some perfect box kicks. When you've got the likes of Maitland and Daly running after it, and you're under kind of constant pressure, and they just kind of look rattled, Leinster. And they finally, I mean, they were talking about in the pre-game commentary about kind of how Leinster are really good once they get kind of past 5 phases and they start kind of churning through the phases and putting the pressure on. And they finally got to do that in the second half, and they scored a few tries. But by then it was kind of too late. And Saracens, yes, they only scored 3 points in the second half, but Leinster just didn't turn up to the races, really. Given that this is a team that haven't lost a single game since last year's European Cup final against Saracens, I don't know. You expected them to kind of be a bit more confident. I know they're playing Saracens and there's a lot of pressure and everyone knows Saracens have been preparing it. And to be honest, as you said in the intro, Johnny Sexton, I mean, 35 and there's still talk of him trying to make the next World Cup. His contract ends at Leinster at the end of this next season. And it'll be interesting to see what happens to him, whether he actually kind of just retires, because he'll probably be 36 by then. But I mean, again, he just didn't look kind of there and with it. And I mean, they started him and they brought him on as a sub the previous week and he had 20 minutes. I'm not sure how much game time he's had recently, but he just didn't didn't look.
They rolled him out for they rolled him out for the semi-finals and that's it. I think Harry said a stat in the chat that he'd only played once in Wales in 6 years or something ridiculous like that. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy.
And you're going in against the Saracens team who've probably mixed it up for the past few weeks, rested their players where they needed to. Didn't see one Johnny Sexton wraparound, even though Saracens would have probably smashed that backwards anyway. But yeah, I don't know. Saracens just didn't seem to be there. And I think it's a reflection of Saracens don't really have a competitive league. I mean, the final the week before was not competitive, as you probably discussed. And they're not used to suddenly jumping up, because it is a different intensity when you're playing a European quarter-final against Saracens, especially against their pack. So I wasn't really surprised by the result.
But you go down that Leinster team, and the Leinster team's probably better than on paper at least, is better than the Saracens team. Obviously, I just noticed, I've just got up in front of me that Tim Swinson was in the second row for Saracens, which is quite interesting. Obviously, they've signed him for the basic championship. But yeah, I just think it's just They
didn't start Scott Fardy.
Yeah, which I think is a strange one. He's not even in the squad. Was he injured though? Is he injured? Because he wasn't. It's not in the squad either.
Not in the
So,
squad. Maybe
but-
he is injured.
But you'd expect them, like, let's say, Leinster they hadn't lost. The Saracens weren't exactly coming in. They weren't playing the best rugby. Yeah, they'd won half their games since the restart. They'd still lost though. Obviously, no Farrell, Alex Good. We sort of discussed that last week. I'd have liked them to. They probably made the right decision in the short term to go Good at 10. They need to beat Leinster. He's probably the better option because but Manu Vunipola is the future, and you sometimes eventually at some point have got to pull the trigger. And like Watts to pull the trigger with Amanga, Harlequin with Marcus Smith, Exeter, Joe Simmons, like today, we'll talk about in a moment. Captain and Exeter, they're all the same age, but Manu Vunipola has not had that same treatment, as it were. That they have confidence in him to start. There's no problem with that, but in a big game, he's yet to be able to pull the trigger. But I mean, Alex Good can still go. His trial looked absolutely class. So
yeah, great.
Yeah, but you'd say though they're going to Racing, and the last time they played Racing in Paris, Racing won quite comfortably. I think it was in the group stages a year ago. But yeah, like fair play to Saracens. That's what I can say to that. One thing, just very quickly on Racing Metro that I was reading about in the week, which might be a complete rubbish, but Simon Zebo's contract's up at the end of the year, and he's been strongly linked with London Irish. So,
I mean,
by you.
Irish exile, it would suit.
I mean, it'd be classic us. I mean, old Irish player that wants a swan song in England and living in London. Absolutely perfect, really. But I wouldn't say no to him. He's 30, so he's still got a lot of experience to offer us. But it depends on how much they pay him, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting. I think he'd be demanding $500,000.
Yeah, at least. Well, I don't know what he's on at Racing, but yeah, I didn't. I mean, we forgot Racing very quickly to go back to them. Well, it sort of helps the prep for next week. But Mr. Muscle, Camel Shat, had a man of the match performance. He's been working on that neck again in lockdown. He generally looks just a seriously good operator for the hooker role for France, potentially. They've never because it's Gerardo who's the main hooker, isn't he? The first choice, but yeah, he's a seriously good hooker. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes with George.
Just very good around the park. Very good around the park.
He's just a big ball of muscle.
Yeah. I mean, there was a photo, I don't know, maybe a few weeks ago of him stood next to Finn Russell in training. And, like, his neck is about 3 times the size of Finn Russell's arms. But, yeah, he's definitely a bit of a gym bunny.
Yeah, he likes. He's been to Joe Tricky in Joe's gym. He's had a few programs with him. Other quarter-final, of the Champions Cup. Toulouse went past Ulster pretty comfortably, 36-8. I've only seen the highlights of this because I was out, but it looked from that Toulouse looked pretty good. Gerardo in the centre looks pretty strong. He made a couple of busts and breaks. Cheslin Kolbe scored 2 beautiful tries with his crazy feet. Lovely inside set. He's so good. So crazy. Good, isn't he?
Oh, he's really good. And he makes it look easy as well. That's the thing. Is like being quick and being able to step and just it looks like he already knows that he's going to score by the time he gets the ball, just because he has that yard of kind of space on someone. But again, Colby did great, but I mean, Stockdale got shown up by James Lowe the week before, but Stockdale was in no man's land for both tries. And he looks great in attack, but his defence certainly needs some work, Stockdale. He's great with ball in hand going forward when he's in space, but he got shown up a bit by there. But yeah, Toulouse, it'll be interesting. I mean, it's been a while since they've won, isn't it? When was the last time they won the European Cup? But they've got the history there.
I'll have a look.
But yeah, it was interesting to see what happens with them against Exeter.
2010, they will won the Champions Cup. So yeah, 10 years. So a while. But they've got the squad. They've now, I think they've established themselves as what they used to be at, which is a massive forward pack. The Arnold twins of Richie and Rory in there are just terrifying to have in there. But they've got they've got that style of French rugby, which what it should be, which is jouet, which is dominant forward pack, but get the ball to a speedy backs who don't really have a set structure. Basically the complete opposite of Exeter, where they literally play what's in front of them, and that's great rugby to watch. And as I say, from what I saw of the game, they look like a seriously good side. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Exeter get on. I think Exeter have got them at home. I'll just double check that while I'm just saying that. But yeah, Exeter not at their best. I don't know if you've watched the game, but I've seen it in its entirety. They didn't look like their fluid best, but at the moment it's enough to beat Northampton. To be fair, Northampton looks a lot better than they have done in previous weeks. And considering they had issues with their front row, which they've talked about all week, four loose heads out injured. So Alterac, Waller, Hobbs, Amwemi and Van Veek were both all unavailable. They called up this 19-year-old lad, Ibobi, I think his name is, who's 19 in the academy, who literally a year ago was playing number 8. I mean, he didn't even look, he looked like a child, like just did not have the physique. But he got 2 scrum penalties against an international front rower in Thomas Francis, and that's a massive, massive achievement. So fair play to Northampton. Interesting thing maybe to start with and have a discussion on is I can see why I did it, because Naravoro is not on the form that he usually is, but Matt Proctor started on the wing for Northampton, which I thought was quite interesting. That Chris Boyd had said in the pre-match that he's the best 13 defensively he's ever worked with, so then move him out to the wing. It's quite an interesting call.
I mean, it was, but I think when you saw Stuart Hogg make a few of those outside breaks and they were around the edges, is that he's great defensively, but still playing defensively at wing and playing defensively at outside centre. I'm sure Tricky can attest to this. It's probably actually reasonably different, and also kind of you've got to know when to jump in and help your 13 and when not to. And there's a few moments when you saw Hogg was just getting on the outside shoulder of the 13, and it wasn't clear whether it was a 13 having to cover backwards or whether the 14 needed or the 11 needed to jump in and make the tackle. So it's interesting to suddenly change that in the quarterfinal of the European Cup. It's an interesting move.
Yeah, I was just say, I think, it's a bold call, and we say I rate Proctor quite highly. So, but to be fair to him, Fraser Dingwall scored a nice try as well, cutting back against the grain. And they say Northampton, they went for a 6-2 split on the bench to try and combat the Exeter power. At the moment, they're not playing well enough to do that. But Exeter they're now, with the additions of Hogg, with the Johnny Gray. I mean, Johnny Hill, again, right in front of Eddie Jones, scores a try, holds the lineup out, steals, takes the ball. He is, with Crusoe in Japan, I think he takes that next spot in the second row, because he is, at the moment, the informed second row in England. Yes, it makes a difference. He's playing the best team in England, but you've also got to take it at face value that he's scoring tries, he's turning balls over, he's taking stuff in the line out, he's doing a lot more stuff. He's a bit more mobile than maybe Cruz was anyway, so we're getting a value in that. But yeah, he's a seriously good player as well.
Playing well in a good team is what you want for England, isn't it? Because in England, playing for England, you're going to be one of the best players in the country. So if you're one of those players that are able to kind of latch onto the good work done by others, sometimes you get those players that are stars in their team and do everything for their team, but they don't fit in when they're in that higher environment because they're not the man anymore. So maybe that is a good thing.
Yeah. And
I'd also say as well.
There's the depth at
Yeah,
Exeter, like Sam Skinner on the bench,
Oh,
and people like that you can, like, you're not completely relying on him to play every game week in, week out, because he's a great player, but you've also got people like Sam Skinner there, so he's not going to kind of be fatigued because you've got people to bring on, or he doesn't need to start every single week, which also helps.
I mean, the extra strength and depth is absolutely mad. I mean, just off the top of my head, not even in the 23, but they are fit. So this is Baxter being able to pick his best players. Dave Dennis, Australian international, though he's on a bit, he's not as, don't get me wrong, he shouldn't be starting, and he probably shouldn't even be in the 23, but he is still a very, very good second row, and he'd probably get in any other team's 23 in the Premiership. And Don Armand, who we talked about, people were talking about 2 years ago now, is some guy that we needed in the England team, and 2 years ago he was unbelievable. But he's not even in a look in. He's in the extra, like, second team, third team that go out and play in midweek for them. Like, it's crazy. Like Yanis Kirsten, who the other week when they played Northampton in the Premiership and he got 26 tackles, can only get on the bench. Like, it's ridiculous, quite frankly. Their strength and depth is mad. But what's good is as well, because they're not household international names, that they are probably getting paid what their market value is. So obviously the Exeter are not going to be, they're not going to have, I don't think they're going to be over the salary cap in anything, but that's what you want to have. You want to be finding these players. Like Jacques Vermeulen's the perfect example. Scored a beautiful try again, like cutting again, super feet. He's got power. They found him in playing in the Currie Cup in South Africa. Like, yeah, what a player. Yeah, Exeter. It's Exeter's to lose for me for the Champions Cup. Now Leinster are out. I think it's Exeter's time. I think they are at home to. Well,
I think Exeter are the only team there. I don't know. I see Saracens going and beating Racing Metro away. But I think if it came to a final, I think Exeter would be the only team that would beat Saracens out of the last four.
Yeah.
Out of the field, totally. I think they're the only team that would, if it came down to a final, would beat them. Because by the final, they're going to have Owen Farrell. Does Owen Farrell come back next week? Or is it the week? Or will he be back for the final?
5 weeks, isn't it? Got 5 week ban.
Or is it 5 game?
I think it's
obviously
5 game.
Midweek games, don't they?
That's true. Oh, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But even if he doesn't come back, Alex Good has proven that he can still if Good's got Barrett, Daly, Duncan Taylor, Lewington, there's enough in there for Good to just literally pass the ball, and they're still going to be able to create things. They're still a very good outfit without Farrell in there. Obviously, Farrell will make a difference, but they could cope without him. That's Champions Cup done. Just rattle through some of the Champions Cup, Challenge Cup games. I haven't seen a lot of them. Toulon Scarlets looked, I don't know if anyone's seen the highlights of that or watched it, but 11-6. I'm pleased I missed it, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, Parise looked so excited when he scored, but it looked like a dull game. Looks like Lee Halfpenny being Lee Halfpenny and kicking long kicks, and Toulon just being the mediocre French team that they now are.
Great try though. That I think the highlights were all the good bits of the match, but awesome try offloading through tackles. Some of the big boys as well, some of the second rows, and obviously Parise finishes it off. But yeah, from the sounds of it, that was the only real bit you wanted to watch.
They play. They've got Leicester. Obviously, Leicester didn't play their game because Cast. There was a couple of coronavirus cases in the Cast setup. So a couple of players and a coach, I think, had contracted it. So they rightly forfeited the game and let Leicester go through. And at the moment, that's probably the only way at the moment that Leicester are getting wins. To be fair, I mean, they did beat Northampton before, so we are being maybe a bit harsh to them. But yeah, that's a good opportunity to see where Leicester are at the moment anyway against Toulon. Bordeaux, Edinburgh, our beloved Bordeaux, come up the boys. Sandy Cordero getting on the score sheet. I love Bordeaux. Yeah. It's nice to support the team, especially when you support. You guys are a little bit different because obviously your teams are a little bit better at the moment. You guys are actually winning, but as an Irish fan, being able to watch it, actually generally support a team and actually then go into a game knowing, I think they're going to win this game, and they actually go and do the job and win, is great. So buzzing, absolutely buzzing for that game. Thoughts on Bordeaux? Anyone see it in detail?
I saw the highlights. The only other thing to note is Big Ben on the wing, Lamb. I think it was his big storming run, and God, he can shift for a big bloke. He's gonna be tearing it up. It might be him opposite Nadolo. That will be an interesting.
They're playing Bristol. They got Bristol.
Oh, okay, they got Bristol. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, you said yeah.
Even more.
So you got.
That's for me. Like that's the game of the weekend next week on Friday night.
Got Cordero.
What a game that is.
Versus Morahan and, well, let's say Rodrada, just because it's a better matchup. Players. Like unbelievable scenes. That'll be a great highlight reel. I'm trying to actually watch the game this week, but some unbelievable stuff, I'm sure.
Oh, it's going to... I mean, Matteo Jalibert versus Callum Sheedy, that's a great matchup. Jefferson Poirot versus Carl Sinclair, that's a great matchup. Diaby versus Luatua. Yeah, there's some ridiculous... Yeah, Cameron Wokey wasn't even starting for Bordeaux. He was on the bench.
Fair enough.
Watch out, Quins fans. Ben Bottika's back in the Premiership. He's obviously, he's still at Bordeaux, but he'll be playing. He'll be in the 23 somewhere. But let's move on to Bristol because it was my favourite game of the weekend, and it was on Friday night. 50s putting absolute Dragons away, 56-17. Dragons, to be fair to them, like on a positive, they said at the start that they needed to basically kick the ball out and not kick the ball to Piatow. And they mixed it up. They changed their line out. They didn't compete at the line out, which I really liked. They tried to play a little bit quicker. They went wide as much as they could. And they did cause Bristol some problems early on. And Bristol really couldn't get going. And then literally about half an hour in, I think, that the Dragons' fatigue set in, that they hadn't played for 3 weeks. And the week before, they drew against Ospreys and they'd lost quite heavily to Scarlets with a rotated team. But, I mean, Bristol are now just... When Bristol get on the front foot, they are one of, if not the best club side in the world, just to watch. Just because the offloading is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you've seen semis try, didn't you? Have you seen all semis try?
Yeah,
it's incredible.
And just...
yeah, go on.
It's just the kind of, he's going to try it. He's going to try and offload. You know that you need to try and stop that offload. But he's just so good and it's just so well timed that there's nothing teams can do about it. He's great. Honestly, he's so good to watch, which is very depressing from a Bath fan that Bristol are that good to watch. But I tell you who I think has probably been one of the signings in the summer break is Ben Earl. He has been so good.
Yeah.
What a player.
England sevens, we're just inundated with great seven choices at the moment. He offers something different.
Yeah, because I think for me, I was thinking about this the other because he's unbelievable game. That footwork, the speed that he's running, and then just beat a guy like that. It's Rodri. It's Rodri Williams at the back, I think it is. No, it's not. That's the 9. Anyway, it's a Williams, I think, at the back, and who's not a slouch at all. But it's just unbelievable feat. Obviously he's been in the squad. He came off the bench against Scotland. He's been capped by England. Obviously, Eddie Jones sees something in him. I just think his ability to play 8, and he looks a bit more of a natural 8 than Tom Curry is, let's say. But something obviously you've got Underhill. Underhill's brilliant at tackling. We know what Curry can do. Jack Willis over the ball is probably the best out of all of them. But Ben Earl as a combination probably does just more overtly anyway, has more of an impact on the game. I don't know where you think where he would go or where he is in the pecking order, but
I mean, he might be one of those options for 8 if Billy's not on form. And depending what happens next year I know there's all this talk that Eddie Jones is still going to pick Saracens players, even if they're playing in the Championship, as long as they have some game time. But that's not guaranteed. Where Ben Earl can kick on, he might be a very good option for 8, because Don Brandt's been not too bad, but he's not playing in a great Quins side. And he wasn't as good as he was at the start of the season. He's still great. And actually, Ben Earl could be that kind of backup 8. And it might balance well with just Underhill bulldozing, Curry competing kind of all around the park. And then because he is a strong ball carrier. So I reckon he's a good option at 8.
I think I completely agree with you. I think, I'm a massive fan of Alex Donbrand. I think he's got an opportunity to. He's still very young, and I think he will get an England cap, and I think he will get capped by England. And we haven't even talked about Sam Simmons at the moment. I mean, Sam Simmons is another one that is just very quick, very powerful, good over the ball. But maybe something that Don Brandt hasn't got, which the others have got, is that ability turnover over the ball that we don't see him do a lot compared to Earl, Curry, Underhill, and maybe even Simmons to that extent. So I would love in this 8 nations in the autumn for Jones to pick the game where England maybe want to trial some people out, and they go Curry, Underhill, Ben Earl at 8. Because at the moment, as I say, Billy's quality, but you have to pick on form, and at the moment it's outrageous. While I'm just, I'll come to you in a moment. I'll come back to you guys in a moment. But while I'm talking very quickly, if you guys just Google Joe Webber Bay of Plenty and go and have a look at his hair, and then we'll discuss Joe Webber in a moment as I just round up some Southern Hemisphere rugby, because it is absolutely outrageous. So Super Rugby AU ended this weekend, which obviously feels like a long time ago. That was way back in the summer that started. But the Brumbies took a 28-23 win in the end. They were the best team in the tournament, and they probably deserved that win. The Reds were the second best team in the tournament, with some ridiculously good players like Tay McDermott, Harry Wilson. It's really started to put Liam Wright, Felipe Daungunu. But again, the main man, as we talked about way back when in our preview podcast, Falau Fayanga gets himself another try from the back of the maul. And but it's been a really great competition for Super Rugby for Australia. Like they've had the issues in Victoria with COVID spread, and obviously the Melbourne Rebels couldn't be based where they were. But the competition as a whole, as we said, that Super Rugby teams have struggled for a considerable amount of time over there. And it's just great to see they've managed to get themselves back to where they competitive as they were. And actually, when the Rugby Championship starts in a few weeks' time, and Australia are going to be a lot more competitive than I think a lot of people maybe will give them credit for. And they will probably pull the trigger. I think Dave Rennie's not hidden his intentions to go quite youth, and I think that's the way to go. Like the likes of Tay McDermott, Arani Simone, Harry Wilson, as I've said. Noah Lolasia at 10 was back for the Brumbies after a hamstring injury. He looks really, really good, like the real deal at 10. Is only 20 years old. But again, I don't know if you've seen the highlights, but Jordan Petaia is one of the standout players currently up right now. If you've not seen John Petaia, he was at the World Cup in 2019, but he is a seriously good player. Questionable haircut, but a really, really great player. Great competition. Minus 10 very quickly. Have we Googled Joe Webber, lads?
Yeah. I think that can't be beaten for worst haircut ever on a rugby field.
It does seem to be a thing at the moment that all of these pictures are going viral, and it seems to be like, who can do it bigger and better? And obviously with Aotearoa starting a couple of months ago now, a few in there, Premiership, loads of mullets flying around, and then he's gone and done that. Wow. Like, literally, what else can you do to top that?
Yeah, and it's like, crazy. If you look at what he looked like previously, it's not even close. It doesn't look like the same bloke. I mean, it's not like he, like, I don't know, used to have long hair and he's just like shaved off the top and just let the back grow out. He's literally changed his hair completely. He's probably spent a lot of money doing it as well, I imagine.
So a lot of time.
We had Harry and I did the worst lid competition a few weeks ago now, and we put Tiff Eden at the top for worst haircut on debut probably ever, which is shocking. But Tiff Eden's looks perfectly normal compared to poor old Joe Webber. The problem is as well, like he's put, like, for those that haven't seen it, do just pause the podcast here and just go and just type in Joe Webber Bear Plenty, and we won't say any more because I don't want to spoil it for you because I won't be able to describe it to the justice. But if you can pull a haircut off like that, you need to be good. But he hasn't. He just looks like a standard New Zealand mitre 10 winger. So, but he's more. But he's getting his name out there. So
it's a mullet with dreadlocks. Like, I don't know. Jeez.
It's crazy. I won't go through too much of the results because just for the timing rises. But Tasman, who have got Sevu Reece, Funganuku at 13 and Mark Talea on the other wing, are just unreal. Just they won 54-21 against Northland in Tasman on Friday. So they topped the Premiership standings. Ridiculous. If you haven't seen the highlights, you go and watch those. As I say, they're very short on the Mighty 10 YouTube channel, like 5 minutes long. Very good. Interesting, just a couple of things to pick out really for me was Jamie Booth, the Hurricanes replacement 9, was actually on the wing. Actually started on the wing for Manawatu against Otago in their 36-25 loss with Aaron Smith at 9. Probably they've got some good players in that Manawatu team, but they don't seem to be clicking that well together. And Lachlan Boshier, who a lot of people I didn't get a look in, even in the North v South game. Everyone's been kicking off about that in New Zealand. From what I've seen, he had another standout game for his side. So yeah, if you've got some time at the weekend, you like getting up early, go watch the Mighty 10. It's very good. If you like,
it's very watchable rugby. It's very open, kind of. I don't know, and you get to see these All Blacks in kind of a smaller team. I just think it's such a good model. I think it's something that should be replicated for other countries. I think you should kind of, I don't know how you would implement it, because it's in their kind of rugby calendar and in their structure, and it has been for years and years and years. And you know how the kind of that level is just as popular amongst the locals to go and watch. They get good turnouts for those games, just kind of as much as the Super Rugby, because there's always kind of the comments made about Super Rugby. And in some areas, they value their local team a lot more than the Super Rugby team that's operating in their region. I just think it's great to see Kieran Reid go and play for kind of a smaller team, and all the big names were out in force. The Damien McKenzie's, Bowden, and people were all out this weekend. And I don't know, I just think it is a bit more of a friendlier, kind of open, local, supporting your local club kind of is great.
Yeah, and as I say, like, we're on Bowden very quickly. Obviously, Richie got the upper hand over him in the North v South game. It's the South one, but it was obviously probably the tie of the weekend, which was Canterbury Taranaki. Taranaki won 23-22 with a Geordie Barrett speciality 45-metre absolute thunderbolt boot penalty. Just, I love Geordie Barrett. But yeah, so Bowden got a bit of one-upmanship over Richie in that game. But yeah, just yeah. I've repeated myself multiple times on this podcast, but I just love New Zealand rugby. It's nice to watch. There's not a lot of other news maybe to discuss, but one thing that did come out today is a transfer, and that transfer is Luther Burrell to Newcastle. Initial thoughts on that?
I think it's probably a good sign for both of them. Like, he's been in league and he's now transitioning back. He's a bit old. He's not going to go into one of those real top teams, but he's got that experience and he's played for England a bit before, so he has got some ability. And Newcastle, I'm sure, will love to have him there as they go back into the Premiership. So, yeah, I hope it all works out for them.
Yeah, I think he's obviously got an awful amount of experience, and I think that's probably what they've brought him in for. I don't know who else they've got at centre. Gareth Farrell, I think, is a name.
Because they lost Johnny, but I'm trying to work out. They've signed They signed a Argentinian centre. But I can't remember what his name was. But
I mean, realistically, they could have
Mateus Orlando. They've got Mateus Orlando. That's who it is. Sorry about that massive gap. Yeah. And they've also signed Pete Lecoq from Doncaster Knights is another one. Yeah, but Mateus Orlando, who played for the Jaguares in Super Rugby. And then, as I say, Luther Burrell won the Premiership with Northampton, England capped. Quite a few caps for England, really. And as I said, he's a good, solid centre. And actually, a team that's going to be in the bottom six, you'd probably say, as a team coming up from the promotion. You need a big ball carrying 12 that's just, you're going to give them the ball and they're going to get you over the gain line. And so I think it's a really good pickup for Newcastle. And they've also signed, in the week, they've signed a South African scrum half who's quite useful. But I can't remember off the top of my head. Bear with me. Who is he?
Because they've still got Mickey Young there, don't they? Who I think is captain.
Yeah, I believe so.
Captain.
Yeah. Oh God, what's his name? It's terrible to find these things out. Anyway, they've signed a South African scrum half who's played in Super Rugby as well. Got capped once by South Africa, but I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But again, yeah, sorry, it's come up here. Louis Scarida. Probably not how you pronounce it. Sorry, Louis, but there you go. Played for the Sharks. One-time cap for South Africa. So we know what South African scrum halves can do in the Premiership. Your likes of your Fafs, your Kirsch, Ryan Axel. So Newcastle are making some waves in the sign department, which they'll need to do because it's going to be a very competitive restart when we start again in end of October. Let's just end quickly, lads, with predictions for next week. Friday night, game of the weekend. Despite it being in the Challenge Cup, for me, it's the game of the weekend. Bristol Bears versus our beloved Bordeaux Beglers. It's Semi versus Cordero. Semi's against his former club. Ben Lamb in the mighty maroon. Who are we going for? Bristol at home as well. Oh,
Bristol. And that's from a Bath fan.
Yeah, I think sadly it's got to be, isn't it? I know Dragons weren't great, but Bristol have been very good. And as you say, when they turn it on, they could be anyone. It'll be a great match, I think, because Bordeaux look really good as well at the moment. And as I mentioned previously, some really big names and some great players in that, particularly in the back three and in the outside backs. So it'll be great to watch.
I'm going to go Bordeaux because I think Bristol are going to choke. I have a feeling that there was frailties in that Dragons game, despite Dragons not playing a lot of rugby. For that first 15 minutes, that Bristol were on a lot of mistakes. They conceded a try from Ashton Hewitt, really against the run of play. Bordeaux have played more games. They were on form before the restart. Anyway, they were top of the top 14. They've got real X factor. I would say people that have seen Super Rugby will know about Ben Lamb, but Cordero when he was at Exeter, just electric. I reckon Bordeaux to nick it because I think Bristol might choke because it's a semi-final. But I'd love to see both. I'd love to see both sides win because I do like them both. But I'll go Bordeaux. And then all the rest of the games are on Saturday. Racing Saracens in Racing, so in Paris. I think Johnny's just left. He's given up.
Racing who? Saracens.
Racing Saracens. Sorry, yeah.
I think you're probably gonna. It's gonna be a close one again, I think, but I'll go Saracens. Certainly, if they, one of the worries was will they be able to play with Andy Good at 10? Would they be as good? And obviously, he stepped up to the plate, so there's no real worries for them at the moment. I don't think.
I'll match you and go Saracens. They showed a bit more. I think that, yeah. Racing weren't the complete picture against Clermont. Saracens, we know how good Saracens can be, despite not having Owen Farrell. Then Exeter Toulouse. That's probably the pick of the quick of the semi-finals in the Champions Cup in Exeter. That makes a massive difference, I think. Home, though there's not mere crowd, it's a home advantage. I'd love to see Exeter get to the final, but I have a horrible feeling that Cheslin Kolbe is going to turn it on.
He looked great again, didn't he? Yeah, I think it'll probably be one of those ones where Exeter grind out a boring win. I think they'll probably just go back to what they know and what they do really well. Toulouse hopefully will try and stop that from happening with the X factor that they've got. But yeah, as I say, I hope Exeter do go through because you want an English team in there and they're playing so well. But it could end up being a very boring game if they want it to be. So for a kind of rugby purist view and wanting to watch a good match of rugby, you kind of hope to lose, take control and turn it on. But I think it will be Exeter.
It's going to be a Harry Berryman absolute Norse fest. I think he's going to be absolutely loving this game. Come on, Exeter, go England, come on, Exeter to beat Toulouse. Johnny, you going Exeter as well, or Toulouse?
No, I'm not going Exeter. They were against a Northampton team that has not been great since the we've come back after lockdown, and they definitely won the game, but there were some frailties there, and I think that big Toulouse pack might run them ragged a bit. I mean, Exeter are great up front, but I think that they'll meet their match, and I think there'll be some kind of moments of brilliance. I mean, they're going to have Maxime Medard, Johan Uge, and Cheslin Kolbe as your back three, and I think that's where they'll be dangerous. I think that's where Toulouse might win it.
Yeah, If Kolbe turns up and does what he can do against, as I say, as he did against Ulster and he did against England in the World Cup, yeah, but we'll see. And then the final game, the game that I definitely won't be watching, because hopefully at this point in the night we might have had a few beers, Johnny, by this point next week. Oh, we've got to make sure we watch these games. I just realised because I'm going to be with you, so we need to make sure we can actually watch these games. Obviously, social distance as much as we can. Everyone just make that very clear. But yeah, a game that I have probably no interest in watching. But if it's on, it's on. Toulon, Leicester in Toulon.
Yeah, so I can't bring myself to say that I think Leicester might be in a European Cup final. How shit would that be after how they played recently? Be funny in a way, but yeah, I don't want Leicester to. I mean,
imagine that final, Bristol, Leicester.
Easy that's the park ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Toulon.
Yeah. Toulon, definitely.
Big surge to get a hat trick. Let's go. Yeah. Well, that concludes, and then we've got the Premiership to follow after that for the week after that. But that concludes episode 17 of the Ruck 'Em All podcast. We will see you next week on Sunday, where probably Johnny and I will be slightly hungover from our big night in Bristol. Tricky will probably still be doing his these lesson plans he's got to do, but hopefully with a cider in hand. Again, thanks for tuning in. Engage with us stuff on social media and stuff like that. And we'll see you next week.
See you later.
Cheers.